There is an African adage that says, a man who hangs around a beautiful woman without speaking his intention will end up fetching water and firewood on her wedding day. The people of Unimaginable village loved repeating that proverb whenever they saw young men wasting time around women they admired. Some laughed whenever they heard it, while others nodded with serious faces because they had seen it happen many times. But nobody knew that the proverb was about to become the painful reality of one man named Kelvin. Kelvin was every girl's dream. Tall, handsome, educated, respectful, and born into a wealthy family that lacked nothing. His father owned businesses across different cities, and his mother was known for her generosity. Money had never been a problem in his life. Yet for all his confidence in business and friendships, Kelvin was completely helpless whenever he stood in front of one woman. Jane. Jane was a beauty wrapped in kindness. Her smooth dark skin glowed like polished bronze under the evening sun. Her bright eyes could calm an angry person, and her smile was so warm that strangers immediately felt welcome. Whenever she walked through the village market, conversations paused. Women admired her elegance. Men admired her beauty. Children loved her because she always carried sweets in her handbag. And among all those people, one person admired her more than anyone else. Kelvin. Every morning, Kelvin found one excuse or another to visit Jane's family's house. Sometimes he brought fresh fruits. Sometimes books. Sometimes, an expensive perfume from the city. Sometimes he simply came to fix a broken chair or help carry heavy bags. Everyone noticed. Everyone except Jane. Or perhaps Jane noticed but enjoyed the attention too much to ask questions. She always smiled whenever Kelvin appeared. "Kelvin, you're here again. I was passing by. You always pass by my house." They would both laugh. Their friendship became the talk of the neighborhood. One afternoon, Jane's best friend, Grace, couldn't keep quiet anymore. "Jane, are you people dating?" Jane laughed. "Dating? Kelvin has never said anything. But he buys you gifts every month. He's just kind. He escorts you everywhere. He's protective. He scares away every man that comes close." Jane smiled. "That's because he's my friend." Grace shook her head. "I hope one day both of you wake up before it's too late." Meanwhile, Kelvin was fighting battles inside his heart. Every night, he stood before his bedroom mirror, practicing. "Jane. I love you." "No, that sounds too serious." "Jane, would you like to be my girlfriend?" "No." "What if she laughs? What if she says no? What if I lose our friendship forever?" Fear always defeated courage. The next day, instead of confessing his feelings, he would simply buy another gift. Flowers. Jewelry. A handbag. A phone. Anything except honesty. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Tales by Savvy Sam. Your support helps us bring more powerful African stories filled with love, wisdom, and unforgettable lessons. Now, let's continue. Months passed. Kelvin became Jane's unofficial bodyguard. If her car broke down, he appeared. If she needed money for a family emergency, Kelvin quietly paid. If someone spoke badly about her, Kelvin defended her. People even joked that Kelvin was acting like a husband without enjoying the benefits of being one. His mother noticed everything. One evening, she called him. "My son." "Yes, mother." "You love Jane." Kelvin froze. "What makes you think so?" "The mother knows." He smiled nervously. "I do." "Then why haven't you spoken?" "I don't want to lose her." His mother sighed deeply. "My son, silence has stolen more opportunities than failure." Kelvin looked away. "I'm waiting for the perfect time." His mother gently held his hand. The perfect time rarely waits for anyone. But Kelvin convinced himself that tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. And life kept moving. Jane continued living happily, believing Kelvin was simply her closest friend. Then one sunny Saturday afternoon, everything changed. A shiny black SUV stopped outside Jane's office. Out stepped a young man dressed in an expensive suit, wearing dark sunglasses and carrying himself with effortless confidence. He smiled at everyone as though he owned the world. His name was JJ. Unlike Kelvin, JJ was fearless. Within minutes of meeting Jane, he made her laugh. Within days, he asked for her phone number. Within weeks, they were having dinner together. And within months, everyone in town was talking about the stylish businessman from the city who seemed completely captivated by Jane. Kelvin heard the rumors but refused to believe them. Until one evening. He arrived at Jane's house carrying a carefully wrapped birthday gift. Before he could knock, he heard laughter from the backyard. He quietly walked around the corner. There stood Jane. Standing beside her was JJ. They were laughing together. Then, without hesitation, JJ gently held Jane's hand. Jane didn't pull away. Kelvin felt his heartbeat stop. The gift slipped from his fingers and landed softly on the grass. Neither of them noticed. For the first time in his life, the wealthy, confident, admired Kelvin felt powerless. He turned around and walked away in silence. Behind him, Jane continued smiling, completely unaware that somewhere in the darkness, the man who had loved her for years was walking away with tears filling his eyes. And hidden inside that silence was a storm that would soon change all three of their lives forever. The morning after Kelvin saw Jane holding JJ's hand, the entire town noticed something strange. For the first time in years, Kelvin did not stop by Jane's house. He did not call. He did not send flowers. He did not leave a gift at her doorstep. It was as if the cheerful young man everyone knew had suddenly disappeared. Jane noticed it too. She picked up her phone several times to call him, but stopped herself. Maybe he's busy, she whispered. Grace, her best friend, looked at her and smiled knowingly. You miss him, don't you? Jane laughed. Of course I do. He's my best friend. Grace folded her arms. I've always believed Kelvin loves you. Jane shook her head. If he loved me, he would have said something. Grace looked outside the window. Sometimes the quietest hearts carry the deepest love. Jane became silent. For the first time, she began thinking about all the little things Kelvin had done for her. The countless rides home. The surprise birthday cakes. The hospital bills he secretly paid when her father was sick. The way he always walked on the roadside so she would be safer. The way he remembered every important date in her life. Could all those things mean something more? Before she could find an answer, JJ arrived in his usual style. His expensive SUV stopped in front of the cafe. He stepped out wearing a perfectly fitted designer suit and carrying a bouquet of fresh red roses. Every head turned. He walked confidently toward Jane. For the most beautiful woman in town. Jane smiled shyly. Thank you. JJ pulled out a chair for her. I've been thinking. About what? I don't like wasting time. Jane looked curious. When I want something valuable, I go after it. And I want you. Jane laughed. You barely know me. I know enough. You smile with your eyes. You care about people. You make everyone around you feel important. And every day I spend without you feels like a day wasted. Jane lowered her head, trying to hide the blush on her face. Unlike Kelvin, JJ never hesitated. He spoke exactly what he felt. That confidence slowly broke down every wall around Jane's heart. Meanwhile, Kelvin buried himself in work. His father noticed the change. You've been staying at the office until midnight every day. I'm fine. No, you're not. I'm just busy. His father sighed. Money can solve many problems, but it cannot buy lost opportunities. Kelvin forced a smile. I'm okay. But he wasn't. Every place reminded him of Jane. The park where they shared roasted corn. The roadside restaurant where they laughed over spicy pepper soup. The bookstore where she always spent too much money. The church where they sat side by side every Sunday. Everything hurt. Weeks turned into months. The distance between Kelvin and Jane became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Jane finally decided enough was enough. She drove to Kelvin's family mansion. The security guards welcomed her immediately. Everyone knew her. She found Kelvin sitting alone in the garden, staring at a fountain. He looked surprised. Jane. You've been avoiding me. I've just been busy. No. You stopped answering my calls. You stopped visiting. You disappeared. Kelvin looked away. I didn't disappear. Then explain. Silence. Jane sat beside him. Did I offend you? No. Are you angry with me? No. Then tell me what's wrong. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle splash of water from the fountain. Finally, Kelvin took a deep breath. His hands trembled. His voice shook. I love you. Jane froze. I've loved you for years. I loved you when we were teenagers. I loved you when you graduated. I loved you every time I brought you gifts. I loved you every single day. Tears gathered in his eyes. I wanted to tell you. I tried. 1,000 times. But I was afraid. I was afraid you would reject me. I was afraid of losing you. So I stayed silent. And now. His voice broke completely. Now someone else is holding the hand I was too afraid to hold. Jane stared at him, unable to speak. Slowly, tears rolled down her face. Everything suddenly made sense. Every gift. Every sacrifice. Every protective gesture. Every silent look. Grace had been right. Kelvin had loved her all along. Jane covered her face and cried. Why didn't you tell me? Kelvin laughed bitterly. I ask myself that every day. She reached for his hand. If you had spoken even 6 months ago. Kelvin looked into her eyes. What would you have said? Jane closed her eyes. I would have given us a chance. The words struck Kelvin like thunder. His heart raced with hope for one impossible second. Then Jane slowly removed a small ring box from her handbag. She opened it. Inside was a sparkling engagement ring. I'm engaged. Kelvin's smile disappeared. JJ proposed last week. His shoulders dropped. Jane continued crying. I said yes. The silence that followed was heavier than words. Two people who cared deeply for each other sat only inches apart, yet they felt separated by an ocean. Finally, Jane wiped away her tears. I still want you in my life. Kelvin looked confused. My wedding is in 6 weeks. He closed his eyes. I want you there. Jane held both of his hands tightly. I want you to stand beside me. I want you to help with the planning. I want you to be part of my happiest day. Kelvin could hardly breathe. Every word felt like another knife piercing his heart. But when he looked into Jane's tear-filled eyes, he could not refuse her. After a long silence, he forced a weak smile. If that's what you want. It is. I'll be there. Jane hugged him tightly. Both of them cried without saying another word. Neither of them realized that someone standing outside the garden gate had witnessed everything. Hidden behind a parked car, JJ had arrived early to pick up Jane. He had seen the tears. He had seen the embrace. And although he couldn't hear every word, one question began burning inside his mind. What secret exists between Jane and Kelvin? As Kelvin silently agreed to help organize the wedding of the woman he had loved for years, fate was already preparing one final test. And before the wedding day arrived, hidden truths, jealousy, and impossible choices would threaten to destroy every relationship they had built. There was an unusual silence in Kelvin's mansion the morning after Jane left. His mother watched him from the kitchen window as he sat alone in the garden, staring at the engagement ring box Jane had accidentally forgotten on the table before returning to pick it up. She knew her son was hurting. A mother always knows. She walked outside carrying 2 cups of tea and sat beside him. "My son." Kelvin forced a smile. "I'm fine." She gently shook her head. "You have always lied with your mouth, but your eyes tell the truth." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she looked at him and asked softly, "Did she choose another man?" Kelvin nodded. "And now she wants me to help prepare her wedding." His mother closed her eyes. The old African proverb she had heard since childhood echoed in her heart. A man who hangs around a beautiful woman without speaking his intention will end up fetching water and firewood on her wedding day. She never imagined those words would become her son's reality. But Kelvin surprised her. "I'm going to do it." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because I love her. And because loving someone sometimes means wishing them happiness, even when that happiness destroys your own." His mother held his hand as tears rolled down her cheeks. "You have a good heart, my son. But a good heart also deserves happiness." Meanwhile, wedding preparations had taken over Jane's family's house. Women sang traditional songs while decorating the compound. Neighbors came carrying chairs, cooking pots, and colorful fabrics. Everyone was excited. JJ spared no expense. The finest caterers were hired. The biggest event hall in town was booked. Professional photographers arrived from the city. Musicians confirmed their performances. People whispered that it would be the wedding of the year. And standing quietly in the middle of all the activity was Kelvin. He supervised deliveries, paid unexpected bills whenever there was a shortage, organized transportation for guests, even negotiated better prices with vendors. Nobody worked harder than him. People admired his generosity. Some even joked. If Kelvin weren't already family, they would think he was the groom. Each joke pierced his heart like a knife. But he smiled anyway. One afternoon, Jane found Kelvin arranging wedding invitation cards. "You've been working all day. It's okay. You haven't even eaten." "I'll eat later." Jane sat beside him. "I don't know how to thank you." Kelvin smiled softly. "You don't have to." She looked at him for several seconds. "If life had happened differently." Kelvin interrupted gently. "But it didn't." Another silence followed. Neither wanted to speak the words that would only bring more pain. Unfortunately, someone else was watching. JJ. At first, he admired Kelvin. He thought he was simply a loyal friend. But small things began bothering him. Jane smiled differently whenever Kelvin entered the room. Kelvin knew details about Jane that even he didn't know. He knew her favorite flowers, her favorite food, the songs she listened to when she was sad, even the exact amount of sugar she liked in her tea. One evening, JJ finally confronted Jane. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you and Kelvin ever date?" Jane smiled. "No." "Did he ever ask you out?" She hesitated. JJ noticed. "Jane." She lowered her eyes. "He confessed after you proposed." JJ sat quietly. "He loves you." Jane nodded. "And you?" Fresh tears appeared in her eyes. "I didn't know until it was too late." JJ stood up and walked toward the window. For the first time since their relationship began, insecurity entered his heart. Every happy memory suddenly had a shadow. Every conversation between Jane and Kelvin suddenly looked suspicious. Jealousy slowly began replacing confidence. Days later, the traditional marriage ceremony arrived. The compound was filled with music and dancing. Women wore bright wrappers of royal blue and gold. Men wore matching traditional outfits. Children ran around laughing. Family members celebrated everywhere. Kelvin was among the first to arrive. He carried bags of drinks. He arranged decorations. He even helped the cooks fetch water from the borehole when the storage tanks became empty. An elderly man watched him with pity. Then he quietly whispered to another elder, "The old proverb has come alive." The second elder nodded sadly. He is literally fetching water for another man's bride. Neither realized Kelvin had overheard them. He paused for a second, then smiled painfully and continued carrying the heavy buckets. Every step felt heavier than the last. Later that evening, while guests danced joyfully, Grace walked over to Kelvin. "You still love her?" "I always will." "Then why are you doing this to yourself?" Kelvin looked toward Jane. She was laughing with JJ, surrounded by family. "Because she deserves peace." Grace shook her head. "You deserve peace, too." He smiled. "Maybe one day." As the final wedding week approached, invitations had been delivered, clothes had been fitted, decorations completed, and everything was ready. The entire town counted down the days. But fate was quietly preparing one final surprise. The night before the wedding, Jane received an anonymous envelope. Inside were several photographs. Pictures of JJ in another city, holding another woman's hand, wearing what looked like a wedding ring. And attached to the photos was a single handwritten note. "Before you marry him tomorrow, ask JJ about the wife and little daughter he left behind." Jane's hands began shaking. Her breathing became heavy. Her heart raced. Outside her window, rain suddenly began falling as thunder echoed across the sky. At that very same moment, Kelvin sat alone in his room, staring at the neatly folded traditional outfit he would wear to witness the marriage of the woman he loved. Neither of them knew that by sunrise, the wedding everyone had waited for would become the biggest scandal the town had ever seen. And one decision would change all of their lives forever. The wedding day finally arrived. Before sunrise, Unimaginable village was already awake. Women swept the compound while singing traditional songs. Men arranged rows of chairs under colorful canopies, and children ran around excitedly in their matching outfits. Everyone expected a celebration that would be remembered for generations. Nobody knew that within a few hours, tears would replace laughter. Jane sat quietly in her room, dressed in a breathtaking white gown decorated with delicate beads that sparkled whenever sunlight entered through the window. Normally, every bride smiles on her wedding day. But Jane wasn't smiling. She stared at the anonymous envelope lying on the table beside her. Inside were the photographs she had received the previous night. JJ. A woman. A little girl. And what looked like a wedding ring. Her heart refused to rest. Her mother noticed her silence. "My daughter, are you nervous?" Jane forced a smile. "A little." But deep inside, countless questions were fighting for answers. Across town, Kelvin adjusted the royal blue traditional attire specially sewn for him. Ironically, it matched the colors chosen by the groom's family. His mother entered his room. "You don't have to go." Kelvin looked into the mirror. "I gave her my word. You owe yourself peace." He smiled sadly. "If today is the last day I stand beside her, then let it be with dignity." His mother hugged him tightly. "You loved with your whole heart." Kelvin whispered. "I only wish I had spoken with my whole mouth." Guests filled the event center. Music echoed through the hall. Photographers moved from table to table. Everyone admired the beautiful decorations. JJ arrived looking confident and elegant in a perfectly tailored cream-colored suit. People applauded as he greeted family and friends. Kelvin was already there, helping the wedding planners arrange the final details. The two men exchanged a polite handshake. Neither spoke much. One carried excitement. The other carried heartbreak. Minutes before the ceremony began, Jane walked toward JJ. Her hands trembled. I need to ask you something. JJ smiled. Anything. She slowly removed the photographs from her handbag. His smile disappeared instantly. His face turned pale. Who is she? JJ remained silent. And who is the little girl? Still no answer. Jane's voice became louder. Tell me the truth. Finally, JJ lowered his head. They are my family. The room became completely silent. Guests nearby stopped talking. Jane felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. You have a wife? We separated. But we are not officially divorced. And the little girl? My daughter. Jane stepped backwards. You wanted to marry me without telling me. JJ reached for her hand. I was going to explain after the wedding. Jane pulled away. After the wedding. Tears rolled freely down her face. You wanted me to begin a marriage with lies. Her voice echoed across the hall. I cannot do this. She removed her engagement ring and placed it in JJ's hand. The music stopped. The guests watched in complete disbelief. The wedding had ended before it even began. JJ stood motionless. Regret filled his eyes. For the first time since meeting Jane, his confidence disappeared. He quietly walked away without saying another word. Some family members followed him. Others gathered around Jane, trying to comfort her. She cried without restraint. Years of dreams had collapsed in a single moment. Kelvin watched everything from a distance. His heart was filled with mixed emotions. He never wished pain upon Jane. He wanted her happiness, even if it was with another man. Seeing her broken hurt him more than losing her. Without thinking, he walked toward her. Jane looked up and saw him. She immediately ran into his arms. For several minutes, neither spoke. They simply cried. The entire hall watched silently. Later that evening, after most guests had gone home, Jane and Kelvin sat beneath the old mango tree where they had spent countless evenings talking as friends. The village was quiet. The decorations fluttered gently in the evening breeze. Jane broke the silence. I lost everything today. Kelvin shook his head. No. You lost a lie. She looked at him. I almost married someone who hid the truth from me. Kelvin smiled gently. And you discovered it before it was too late. Jane stared at him for a long time. Then she asked the question that had lived inside her heart since the day of his confession. If I had met the brave version of you years ago. Kelvin laughed softly. You would have said yes. She nodded. I would have. Another silence followed. This time, it was peaceful. There was no jealousy. No fear. Only honesty. Months passed. Jane focused on rebuilding her life. Kelvin stopped trying to impress her with expensive gifts. Instead, they simply spent time together. They talked. They laughed. They prayed. They learned each other again. This time, there were no hidden feelings. One beautiful evening, Kelvin invited Jane to the riverside. The sunset painted the sky with shades of orange and gold. He looked into her eyes and smiled. I spent years buying gifts because I was afraid of using words. Jane smiled. So use them now. Kelvin took a deep breath. Jane. I love you. I have always loved you. I don't want to lose another chance because of fear. I want to build a life with you. Jane's eyes filled with tears. She gently took his hand. You finally spoke. And this time? She smiled through her tears. My answer is yes. Kelvin laughed for the first time in many months. The two embraced as the evening breeze surrounded them. From a distance, Kelvin's mother watched with tears of joy. The old African proverb had almost become the story of her son's life. But destiny had written one final chapter. Love cannot grow in silence forever. Kindness is beautiful. Loyalty is admirable. Sacrifice is noble. But if you truly love someone, have the courage to speak before fear steals your opportunity. Because sometimes tomorrow comes too late. And sometimes, if grace allows, life gives you one final chance. Never waste it. If this story touched your heart, don't leave without supporting Tales by Savisam. Like this video. Comment below, speak before it's too late. Share this story with someone who needs the courage to express their feelings. Subscribe to Tales by Savisam for more powerful African stories filled with love, wisdom, suspense, and life-changing lessons. Every like, comment, and subscription helps us bring more unforgettable stories to the world.